talk title for tonight is Touching the Beloved. And I decided to speak about that because I'm currently taking a class in ministerial school all about Thomas Troward. And when you look at Science of Mind, which is the philosophy that we follow in Centers for Spiritual Living, when you look at that philosophy, it's really grounded on Ernest Holmes' study of a number of people plus a number of religions. So he took a lot from all of the world's religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, all the world's religions. And he also studied particular people. He studied Emerson. He studied Troward. He also studied Emma Curtis Hopkins. He was a student of hers, and she was a great mystic. And he also studied the writings and the sayings of Quimby, Phineas Quimby. He was an early healer in the 1800s. And what he did was he took that and he made it into the Science of Mind philosophy that we follow. And what I've found is that as we talk about Science of Mind, we talk on Sunday services or these Wednesday services, we have a tendency to talk a lot about what's known as the law. And the law is really the creative process that we understand is in God. So there is an aspect of God which is fully subjective. It just takes whatever is put into it, and it creates everything that we see, everything that we feel, everything that we touch. Our bodies are part of that which God creates through the law. And we do that, we talk a lot about it because it's through our understanding of the law that we know that we can make changes in our lives. There's that famous saying by Ernest Holmes, change your thinking, change your life. And so we know that if we understand how the law is creating, we understand that it's creating through our beliefs, that we can change those beliefs and therefore change what our life looks like. And by doing that, we quit becoming a victim. We're not a victim of our lives, we're a creator in our lives. And it's a very important piece of our understanding and of our philosophy, of our religion. But sometimes I find that, I've found in my past especially, that I felt disconnected from the church a little bit because I understood the law part. I'm a physicist. I understand processes very well, and I'm able to use them very well. And but there was this other piece that I didn't really understand about myself. And it took me a while to figure out that I was really coming and becoming more and more of what I would call devotional now, which is knowing and loving God for God. And we don't talk about it as much in religious science. We talk about love, God is love, but we don't spend as much time as on the law side. And so in Christianity, for instance, they talk about it all the time. They will talk about it from the perspective of, let Jesus into your heart. That's one way to think about it. I don't think about it personally that way. I think about it more from God coming in and understanding and feeling that love. But when we do talk about God as love and law, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about God as love? Well, one of the things that we're not talking about, I want to kind of touch that base first, we're not really talking about God as this emotional love, the love that we feel ourselves in our relationships with people. That's not really the love that we're talking about, which is a good thing, because if you could imagine God as this infinite being with infinite of that kind of love, it would probably go a little bit crazy. I know I would probably. And then there's The other thing I'm not talking about is I'm not talking about it being kind of this projection of our love. Projection is a term from psychology where it would say, if I'm projecting onto you, I have this feeling. I have a feeling of love, and therefore you must have that feeling of love. And I'm feeling the feeling of love back from you because I'm really projecting it on you. That's the psychology way of saying it. So if we took that to God as love, what I'm not saying is that I feel love towards God, and so I feel that love coming back. I don't think that's true either. And it's not like what I'm saying is that there's two gods. It's not a God of law and a God of love. They're all one God. This isn't about thinking of them as two, but it is kind of like quantum mechanics, where a light wave is either a particle or it's a wave, light itself. And so it's really kind of how you look at that light, whether it's acting as if it's a particle or acting as if it's a wave. It's kind of the same with God. It's either acting as if it's love or it's acting as if it's law, based on how we're relating to it. Now, when I do think of what God as love is, I think of it in two kind of ways. The first one, I think of love as being divine acceptance, which means really kind of grace. It's really kind of the definition of grace, where God is this acceptance of this love, which is complete acceptance of me, which means that as far as God's concerned, I am perfect exactly the way I am. I don't need to change in order to find myself being held in high regard by God. And so the other piece of it is this infinite personalness that God is. So that would be kind of like saying that my personality and your personality are all one of the individualized expressions of the entire totality of personality that God is. So God is more than we are from that perspective. God is, we call it transcendent, meaning that in science mind we believe that God is all that there is and yet more. Ernest Holmes says that God is all of creation, and yet it is not absorbed by its creation, which just means that creation, all of the universe, fits within God. It doesn't mean that we're separate, though. It doesn't mean that God's outside of us. It means that God's within us, and yet it's more, just like Ernest would say, there is a power in the universe greater than we are. And then he finishes it out with, we can use it, or it can use us. Right? But it's a power greater than us in the universe. I don't think that God as is just us grown large. I think it's more than that. So just so that you don't think that I'm off, in Scotland, talking about something that's not really science mind, there's a quote from Ernest Holmes, our founder. He says, "The structure of our whole philosophy is based on two things: the universe as law and order, and the universe as divine presence. The one with which or whom we may commune," that would be the divine presence part; "the other, that which we may use," the law and order part. I believe God is the only presence there is, infinite, intimate, and personal to each one of us, present within each of us and in each one of us as what we are. And then he goes on to say our word goes out as law. So he's really talking about there's these two aspects, and one of them is from the perspective of God as this as a conscious giver, and we are a conscious receiver. So when we're in the aspect of relating to God as this infinite personalness that it is, then God, it, is the conscious giver and we're the conscious receiver. We get that because that's what we feel in meditation. When we're in a mode to listen, when we're in a mode to touch God, then it comes to us through our meditations, through our intuitions. Now, it's possible to wall God off, that aspect of God. If we don't believe in it, we don't want that, it's pretty easy not to ever be in a mode that you're going to receive that. And that's what we find oftentimes with people, is they say, I don't really sense a God. Well, that doesn't mean that God's not there. It means that they're not reaching out to God. So the final part of all of this is that piece. When I decide I'm going to use the law by first going into a meditation or going into some process, whatever it is, where I'm listening to that still small voice inside of me, then at that point, I can put back into the law, into the creative process, that which I have downloaded. In that way, we're in this nice feedback loop. When we're doing that, then love becomes the answer. It's always the answer then. And love at that point, it enwraps us, and enfolds us, and it touches us, just as we are touching the love that God is. And at that point, the love that God is becomes what I call the beloved.